Morning, and you look at the front of the top of Drudge, the Drudge Report, and which really, since the unfortunate demise of Twitter, of X, whatever you want to call it,
the Drudge Report anymore. It's
I mean, I've been on it every day, since 2009, 2010, and I can't believe it's just gotten so bad. It's just straight on disinformation. It's just
ugly images
just
pop up.
Turned into a terrible site. You can't really even get your news feed. So I deleted it from my phone, which is really unfortunate because it's just been for a decade,
used to be your
well
news
over
feed.
a decade.
Yeah.
It's a go-to for a great news feed. But on the top, and guys, if we can screenshot Drudge and put it up, that'd be great. So this is where we end. Donald Trump, who began his campaign saying, "I am your vengeance," shows at the end exactly what "I am your vengeance" means. And the Drudge Report. Trump calls for Cheney execution. Yeah. And he says that she should have 9 guns trained at her face. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her. Firing squad, obviously. And that's where we end. And, Mika, it's... Well, it's more direct than if she had guns pointed at her. He actually says, let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her. 9 barrels shooting at her. This is his final pitch going into the final weekend of one of the most important campaigns. And a campaign that starts with "I am your retribution" ends with Liz Cheney needs to be in a firing squad with 9 barrels shooting at her. Let's take a look at the bite right now.
She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. When the guns are trained on her face. They're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, "Oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy." But she's a stupid person.
9 barrels shooting at her face. This is, again, I want the Wall Street Journal editorial page to look at this. Because, we've been spending a lot of time, rightly, about the Washington Post bending to the will of Donald Trump, and the Los Angeles Times bending to the will of Donald Trump and actually banning, keep that up, keep that up, please.
You will.
Actually banning editorials where their editorial team calls for Harris's selection. But let's go back to the Wall Street Journal, who I have noted, and I read to you every day, whether you want to hear it or not, because for most of the time, they have actually called out Donald Trump's excesses. But as we go to the final weeks of the campaign, Donald Trump goes on Bloomberg. He says the Wall Street Journal always gets it wrong, says he's going to talk to Murdoch, and then what happens? They start making fun of people who are concerned about Donald Trump and his calls for violence. They laugh and they jokingly say, this is, again, after Donald Trump has attacked them and says he's having a meeting with Rupert Murdoch, they write an op-ed an editorial on Monday talking about a fascist meme, as if saying, I'm going to use my military troops and I'm going to use my National Guard to attack my Democratic political opponents, as if that is a meme. And then a few days later, as if They haven't already humiliated themselves enough. Donald Trump keeps talking about violence against his political opponent. And they write another op-ed saying to all the billionaires reading and all of the guys driving around Maseratis who've doubled their fortunes while going to country clubs calling Kamala Harris a socialist, they double down and say there's nothing to see here. Why, the Democrats have been far worse. And then we see this. I wonder, could you put this up again, please? I wonder, Wall Street Journal editorial page, does this look like a meme to you? Or does this look like something that you and the New York Times editorial page and the Washington Post editorial days in better days and every editorial page and every politician on the Republican side and the Democratic side and independents would all come out speaking against this?
Right.
But you have preemptively capitulated to a man who you believe is going to win next Tuesday when many on his own side are panicking. They're panicking and saying, if we don't get more young men out, we are going to lose this race to Kamala Harris. But, Willie, let's just, again, look at this from 30,000 feet. And this is how Donald Trump ends his campaign, calling for 9 rifles aimed at Liz Cheney's face to shoot at her face. This is how Donald Trump is ending his campaign for president.
Yeah, it's a staggering moment here as we make the turn into the critical final weekend, and we can already anticipate. It's probably already happening, what the response will be. Oh, he didn't mean that literally, right. Joe. Come on, you guys. You always blow these things out of proportion. How many times does he have to say things like this, though? It's not, you can't take these in a vacuum. You can look back to him saying that General Mark Milley deserved death for talking to China to reassure China in the moments after January 6, 2021. This kind of language he's used again and again, this kind of violent rhetoric about imprisoning opponents, about shutting down television networks, about people who cross him in any way deserving the worst kind of punishment. And what do we know about that? Maybe a flip comment to him, maybe something he was throwing off the cuff. Maybe he meant that she should go to war herself and stand there and feel what it's like to be in battle. But we know that his supporters take these signals literally, some of his supporters take these signals literally. See January 6th. So he stirs the pot, walks away, and lets hell break loose, as we saw on January the 6th.
Yeah, and you know, Gene Robinson, as we look at this headline, and we see the clip, and I'll be glad to play the clip again if anybody at the Wall Street Journal editorial page wants to call it a meme. As we close the campaign. But Gene Robinson, you have been reporting for decades, like most great journalists. You've spent your time in the London bureau as the Washington Post London bureau chief, as our friend Steve Ratner, but of course Murrow and others who've been through there. And it's that throughout your career has provided you a unique view at how the world looks at the United States. I'm going to ask Caddy in a second, but I just want to ask you your reaction to Donald Trump calling for Liz Cheney being shot in the face by 9 rifles in the closing weekend of the campaign. Not only what it says about where the Republican Party is in 2024, but also what it must look like to our allies in London, in Paris, in Madrid, in Warsaw, across the world.
Yeah. Well, it looks completely insane to our allies across the world, and this is unprecedented, and this is, I'm so glad that we're focusing on this and spending some time on it, because this is not normal. This is not acceptable. This is so dangerous. And I just want to, I don't usually do a personal appeal, but I hope my friend Paul Gigot, who's the editor of the Wall Street Journal editorial pages, and is a friend of mine. Paul, are you watching this? Are you paying attention to this? Is this okay with you? Because I know it's not. Don't you have a responsibility to say that to your readers? This is absolutely beyond the pale. It's a direct threat, not 9 barrels pointed at her, 9 barrels shooting at her. This is just astonishing.
Gene, I second that plea for people like Paul Gigot and others to have the strength that they need to step up, for people at the Washington Post to step up. Liz Cheney just posted a response. This is how dictators destroy free nations. They threaten those who speak against them with death. We cannot entrust our country and our freedom to a petty, vindictive, cruel, unstable man who wants to be a tyrant. Hashtag women will not be silenced. Hashtag vote Kamala. And Joe, to Willie's point, so many people will cast this off as you guys. He doesn't mean it. Who in your life, I ask to the people who say you guys, who in your life would you allow to speak that way? Let alone someone that you would vote for president just to speak that way.
What politician would be allowed?
And I love your term, Joe. I love your term about these billionaires and these newspapers and the Wall Street Journal preemptively capitulating, trading on America.
And with the Wall Street Journal, they actually capitulated after Donald Trump attacked them.
Yeah.
At Bloomberg. And then
they caved.
Trump goes, "Oh, I'm going to talk to their boss. I'm going to talk to Murdoch." And then, Gene, we get that. Now, listen, I talk about New York Times articles all the time because I read the New York Times every day. I talk about the Wall Street Journal editorial page because I read it every day, because it matters. And what you said about Paul Gigot, I have been reading Paul Gigot and the Wall Street Journal editorial page like for 40 years. When I was campaigning as a 29-year-old, everybody was getting faxes from the NRCC. Not me. I would take the Wall Street Journal editorial page and I would carry it around the district. I would read it. I would go out. I would give speeches. And you look at a lot of issues. I disagree with them on a lot of issues, on taxes, carried interest taxes for billionaires, tax cuts, and all of that stuff. But I will say Paul Gigot's page has not disappointed me so many times, where they've spoken out against the big lie. They've spoken out against Donald Trump's call for violence. But that's just filler right now compared to where we are in the final stretch of this campaign. And I do want to say to everybody that is out there, that is foaming at the mouth and thinking we have to capitulate to Donald Trump. We have to. I want you to know Wednesday morning will come. Wednesday morning will come. This election will be over. And whether it's next Wednesday or the following Wednesday, that day will come. But your words will remain. The actions at the Washington Post leadership will remain. What's happening at the LA Times will remain a stain. And Gene, I want to go back because I've got great respect for him, and I always have. I look at what the Wall Street Journal editorial page has done, talking about a, quote, fascist meme. I see what Dan Henninger writes, going, oh, are they Are Democrats really going to kill Donald Trump? Like, Democrats are worse than Republicans. They know that is a lie. And now, again, let's put Drudge up here again for people just waking up, because they wouldn't believe it if we said it.
Yeah.
And we'll play the video again for all the doubting Thomases out there that are going, oh, Joe. You know, that's what Obama people would always say to me. I go
Different
like,
times.
hey, listen, I think it's a really bad time. There's a much smaller things. But
Yeah.
I'd say, I think it's a really bad idea for you to fill in the blank. I'd be like, oh, Joe, oh, Joe. So condescending. And then 3 months later, they go, oh, boy, we should have listened to you. Well, here,
No,
Yeah.
love
it's
you.
Trump people. Oh, Joe, you and your fascist meme. But, Gene, you're friends with Paul.
Yeah.
I've had great respect for Paul for such a long time.
Yeah.
And to minimize this seems to me doing a grave disservice to those readers and to all of America.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, just quickly on the fascist meme, it's not lefty press that called Donald Trump a fascist. It was General Milley and General Kelly, right? Two of the most decorated and bravest warriors who worked very closely with him, and that's the conclusion they reached from having worked with him in the first Trump administration. And so that's not a meme. Those are facts. This is what these very distinguished military men have to say. And again, you're absolutely right. The Wall Street Journal has called out Trump's nonsense about the big lie, about some of his economic policies. They have been brave until the end.
Yeah.
And now the rubber is hitting the road.
You know,
and all of a sudden, it's all okay.
now, there's still time for these papers to step up and do the right
there
thing,
is time.
perhaps at the peril of their own jobs, because I wouldn't put behind, if we're looking at a descent into fascism, which right now, the things Donald Trump is saying and doing parallel exactly fascism, not hyperbole. So there is time to step up, because part of it is destroying things, destroying the very things that perhaps are beacons of truth.
Yeah.
So be careful, Washington Post.
And remember-
be careful,
and remember
LA
who Liz
Times.
Cheney is,
be
by the way.
careful,
Yeah.
Wall Street Journal, because I think your very existence is the problem here. Now Washington Post is losing readers. I'm coming, Joe, and that may be the very much exactly what is going on here. Ultimately, you've got to think ahead.